So I was going to take you on a little bit of a journey today, and I don't think we need to define circular economy. I think everybody here knows what that is. So what I'll do is take you on a bit of a journey from the perspective of an industry, the newspaper and magazine industry, and we'll talk a little bit about the product stewardship there and its production, what's happening in recycling, some of the issues coming up as well. There have been great successes I'd like to share with you, and that's all part of the circular economy. But one of the parts of the circular economy that I think's growing, and we've heard a lot of it talked about today, is the zero waste side of the circular economy initiatives. And I'd like to end, and I think if there's a take-home message, it's, okay, you've done what we can globally as a company, what we've done in our own company locally. How do we build that and engage and make other people part of the process? So I'm going to talk about partnerships, which I think is, I believe, the single greatest thing we can do to expand the concepts of the circular economy. So I'll start by giving you a quick video which sets out the credentials, if you like, of sustainability and how we've worked towards a circular economy in newspaper and magazines. And with a bit of luck, that doesn't start. Well, that was a short video, and I'm not sure. Steph, you know the presenters room, you can get the technical person, and I'll just carry on and just assure you the video was very good. Steph made it. It was very good.
Just click play on it, it's there.
Is it there? They had a bit of trouble loading them, and I don't want to slow proceedings up, so...
Is it on the next slide?
It is. It should auto start on the next slide.
Do you want to go to the next slide?
Yep. No, it's not on that slide. It's in between.
No, it's just not showing up.
It's just not there.
Yeah, I'm not sure, sorry.
Me either. So what we might do is skip that, and I'll just fill you in a little bit of information, and hopefully the last video is the important one I'd like you to see. So how did we start our journey, which we hope is a circular economy journey? We didn't know the name at the time back in 1990 when we were planning and formulating, so we put together a plan, and it's the only plan of its kind in the world. It's a voluntary waste plan, and it's got all the players in the industry. So it's got all the publishers of any size in magazines and newspapers, plus it's got the only producer of newsprint in the country, now called Norske Skog. And we got together and we went to government and we got our plan endorsed. And it was a 5-year plan that's still running, was it 20-something years later, and every 5 years we roll it on with more elements. But that was the hub of changing the way we think about our industry. And from the industry's perspective, that waste plan had something special. It got us all focused on a common goal. So for the first time, we started talking about making paper with recycled content. We talked about making lightweight paper. We all agreed that we couldn't bring in certain types of printing that can't be recycled. The UK did. The UK brought in flexographic printing, and one flexographic newspaper in a ton of paper means the whole lot goes to the tip. It's useless. You can't put it through a normal de-inking process. You have to use wash de-inking, which we don't have in this country. We also had the advantage, as a company, the person who was my boss was able to talk Rupert Murdoch into investing $135 million into a de-inking plant. So we built the market, if you like, to make recycled newsprint, and the publishers all agreed to use it. So that's part of the success of that plan. So what did it end up with? Well, that's really the success. The recycling rate and the plant, the de-inking plant, started in 1995, quite a while back. We exceeded the recycling rate of America, US straight after that, and we're now up amongst the world's top recyclers. And if you do a full analysis of the numbers, which I've done, I'd say if we're not the top recycler, it depends how you measure it. We don't count incorrectly. We count very correctly in Australia. And so I like to think that we're right up there with the world leaders based on very, very good data. And that's a great success story to get from really, frankly, nowhere in the world in terms of recycling, about 28% in 1989, to where we are now, around 76%. So it's a good story. Now, there's another part to recycling which we all forget about, and I just wanted to mention that briefly, and that's reuse. We tend to think of recycling as the only thing, but if you can reuse something, it's part of the circular economy. You stop having to buy something else to do the job. And in the case of newspapers, for example, whenever you put something under the budgie and it's a newspaper, or you start a fire with a newspaper, it's an alternate use that saves some other material. Sometimes a material with a high resource cost. A fire lighter has a high resource cost. So if you can do that, it's a good thing. We actually found from studies we did with Nolans, and again backed up by Enprints Consulting, that somewhere between 80 and 90% is the real reuse and recycling figure in Australia. So our official figure of what gets processed back into products is 76%, but the reuse adds to that, and we think it's well in the 80s, and somewhere around the mid-80s is probably the correct amount. We did surveys across Australia, but it's very hard to get an exact figure out of every household, but it's in that range. So that's another thing I bring to your attention. So one of the barriers I wanted to talk about as well, if you're going to have a circular economy, you have to eventually start looking at not having waste. And of course, you've also got to look at the quality of recycling. And frankly, we heard this morning about recycling not having contamination. That's certainly not the experience that we've found in our industry, in the paper industry. And if you look at soft plastic contamination, and Prince Consulting did some very, very good work for the EPA, which our industry also jumped into and helped fund. And it was looking at contamination recycling bins. And certainly, you can see that the figures show growing contamination. It's of concern to me that as we get less newspapers and magazines in our bins as we move to digital, and after CDS we'll have less glass in our recycling bins, that means if we put the same amount of contamination in as a proportion, it is going to grow. And that's exactly what the figures are showing. So that actually goes for the rubbish bin as well. If you consider things that shouldn't necessarily be going to landfill, like textiles, and what about plastic film? Surely we should be recycling it. They're growing as well, and that's an issue. So there are a couple of things that are going to inhibit us getting to the circular economy, which brings me really about what we can do. And so when you look at what we can do, and I'm just looking at that slide wondering why it's all over the place, it was right on my computer, what we do internally and what we can do with partners. And I wanted to just quickly move into what we can do after talking about, first you get the industry with a sustainability plan and aim for all the things that it can aim for. And then in a company, you can start to do a little bit more. And in News Corp, globally, we set ourselves our goals based on 3 pillars: reduce, engage, and source responsibly. We all think of source responsibly as possibly the first thing, making sure we've got a paper procurement policy in place, all those sorts of things. But engage, actually, is often the things that gets things done. If you can bring your staff along with you and get them engaged, then you can start having things like zero waste goals in the reduce category where people take it seriously. So I put engage as one of the critical first steps. And we did put together, and on the left-hand side you can see our global goals for News Corp, and our Australian goals are on the right. And they're quite ambitious, and I'll take you through a little bit of them. But in those goals, we have waste goals. And zero waste at our owned print centres is a goal we have globally, and zero waste in all our sites is a goal we have locally. And let's talk a little bit about that. First off, we had to get the company focused on it, and so we made an international pledge. Funny enough, Stephanie was just looking on the internet. She said, since Donald Trump came in, the White House pledge that was made with the Obama administration has been removed. So I don't know what's happened in Trump politics. I can't believe he's not all for the environment, but it does appear that the White House pledge now, you have to believe me, that was on the internet at the White House only a few weeks back, wasn't it, Steph? So there is a White House pledge, and in that we've actually put our zero waste goals. 167 other companies around the world, big companies around the world, have jumped in as well and have these goals. We're not alone. We've got lots of good company. But I just thought I'd mention that that's the kind of scale that gets a company focused. And Zero Waste at News, we have a 1 degree sustainability program. 1 degree is the name of our sustainability program that Steph manages. And so we actually put together a bit of a summary of how we're going to get there. And we started off by telling people what zero waste really is. Now, we've joined the Zero Waste Alliance for Business, and that defines zero waste as 90% diversion from landfill. It's being realistic. 100% is exactly what you want to aim for, but the reality is they award you a zero waste compliance if you get to 90% diversion. And we think that's a great starting point. So we've got that in our zero waste goals, and once again it's a bit messed up, but that's what we're working towards. And I'm pleased to say that 2016, well, let's talk globally, News Corp globally at its own print centres achieved zero waste, which is great. That's part of our goal. And we certainly did in Australia. Globally, we got 93% diversion at our print centres, and in Australia we got 98%, Steph, which is a fantastic result. So it's actually changed the way people think about waste. We don't look at what we are about to send out as waste anymore. And we've got that last 2% in Australia to crack, but we're working on it. Well above the 90% that is set internationally. So how do we go about this? Well, we set up a plan, and I won't go into the details of the plan other than to say there's some critical elements. Let's have a look at some of those elements. One was to have a roadmap that set out the process and the way that we got there, and that involved waste audits and understanding exactly what our goals could achieve and setting those goals. Recycling awareness was something that I will take you through at the end as well, and we certainly think that engaging staff in that awareness process is key. We learned some things too. In the zero waste journey, we learned that by gathering data on all our sites, we started to understand our sites. And we noticed that before we achieved our zero waste goal, we had great monthly fluctuation on what was going to landfill. And we weren't consistent. And having a goal and aiming for it meant that people took the trouble to make sure that, oh, well, that load can just go to the tip. Well, those things stopped happening. And so the fluctuations every month started to disappear. And now we're at a very consistent level where we've got very high diversion, up around that 98% in our major print centres. And it's sort of explained by people caring, engaging. And I think that's the critical thing. And that brings me to the take-home message, which I might have to get some help starting this video. But the take-home message is pretty clear. It's about working with partners. And if I'm lucky, I'd like to take you on a journey with some of the great partners that we've recognised in the community. These are people doing things without necessarily getting benefit for themselves out of it, but actually moving the whole community forward. So we'll try and see if this starts. That's the video. Well, no. So I really would like to show that video. I have it on a DVD, but it should be on the machine, on a USB. Is that USB next to you, Steph? I just had it with me a second ago. That's the whole point of the talk, if I can.
1Degree is News Corp Australia's environmental sustainability initiative. It's how we do things. It's how we make our newspapers, our magazines, our websites. It's about the small things that we do that add up to big change.
As a manufacturing site, we're constantly focused on improvements across a wide range of activities, and the environment is an integral part of that focus.
So what we do at TerraCycle is we recycle unrecyclable waste. In Australia, the sort of waste streams that we collect and recycle are coffee capsules, baby food packaging, mailing bags, beauty products, all different kinds of things that you would never think that you can recycle.
Our goal is to keep old mobile phones out of landfill and ensure that they're recycled in a safe, environmentally sound way.
We take in items of furniture, household goods, small electricals that may need a little bit of repair, and we fix them and refurbish them and put them out on our shop floor for sale at very low prices.
We exist to build the skills and knowledge that young people have around food and to increase their participation in food and agriculture here in Australia.
Our organisation, OzHarvest, does three things. We rescue food, and we make sure that we educate the general public as well as vulnerable people on how to live a more sustainable life and not waste food.
Take 3 asks everyone to simply take 3 pieces of rubbish with them when they leave the beach, waterway, park or anywhere.
All of our campaigns are about simple ways that the everyday Australian like you can reduce their impact on the environment.
Fashion Revolution is a global movement encouraging greater transparency and traceability in the fashion industry. We're passionate about seeing a cleaner and safer fashion industry for all members of the value chain.
People often ask me what zero waste means. The International Zero Waste Alliance defines it as getting 90% of your waste away from landfill. That means recycling, reusing, and in the first place using less. That's what we're doing here at News. We've set that goal for our print sites and we're actually achieving it at a large number of them already.
Zero waste means to me a society that each and every one of us is aware about what we purchase and how we live and is mindful of what that impact has on our planet.
Zero waste to us is all about food waste and what we can do to reduce our environmental impact through the food that we buy and eat every day.
Zero waste means the effective management of all waste streams at the site, We fit the criteria for zero waste in terms of 90% of the waste that we generate is not sent to landfill.
For the Bower, zero waste means exactly that. It means nothing going to landfill.
Zero waste means zero impact. We believe in seeing waste as an opportunity, as an ingredient for future use rather than for something to be disposed of.
Zero waste is everything. If we're going to be serious about sustainability, then it has to start with waste. When we look around us, there's no such thing as waste in nature. Waste isn't waste until it's wasted.
And it's great to see that Australians are coming with us. Already 76% of Australians recycle their newspapers. We're one of the best recycling countries in the world.
Focusing on zero waste also allows us to see other opportunities for improvement and synergies within our operation. Whilst these projects may seem small, they all add up.
We should think about where that product is going and what it's being recycled into, and then think about finding a way to buy that back.
One of those opportunities is actually to support the whole crop, so all the wonky, bumpy and lumpy fruits and vegetables that aren't making it to our plate just because they don't look a certain way. And there's a whole lot of food out there that we're not eating because of this.
But if we do have organic waste, it should go into compost.
From the materials we recover from mobile phones, we can make anything from new batteries to fence posts, stainless steel. There's a whole diversity of materials that are recovered. Most people have old phones that they no longer use. Either pass them on or recycle them and return those resources back into productive use.
We have a design team and their whole job is to just come up with ways to turn old products into new products and make it really fun. For example, one of our partners is Colgate, and we take their toothpaste tubes and we turn them into pencil cases.
We've released this great innovation with Close the Loop, our partners, that produces roads out of 30% recycled materials. It's called Toner Pave. You can see it in Melbourne and here in Newtown in Sydney, so it's pretty cool.
If we can't repair or refurbish an item that comes to us, then we work with a multitude of recycling suppliers to ensure that items do not go to waste.
The reduction of the actual waste that we produce in terms of paper, a 5% reduction in electricity usage, a reduction in truck movements through logistics initiatives.
When you learn about the problems of plastic pollution in the ocean, 8 billion tonnes of new plastic entering the sea every year, you can't let that go. We need to be looking towards business and industry as being the pioneers of repurposing materials, keeping them in these endless cycles. This is zero waste, this is the future.
It's all for the environment.
Okay. Steph did a good video, didn't she? And I'm very proud to have worked with those partners to put that together. Thanks, Steph.